The text message glowed on her phone screen like a poisonous spider. I stared at it, my coffee mug frozen halfway to my lips as the ground shifted beneath my feet. Last night was incredible. I can still taste you. Same time Thursday. Liam's working late again. My brother's name sat above the message. Eric, my little brother. My wife hadn't password protected her phone. Why would she? I was too stupid, too trusting, too goddamn blind to suspect anything. The device lay innocently on the kitchen counter where she'd left it while showering upstairs, water running as evidence of her trust that I wouldn't look. I set my mug down with deliberate care, afraid that if I didn't control the motion, I might shatter everything within reach. One swipe revealed thousands of messages stretching back 14 months. Photos I could never unsee. Plans they'd made, jokes at my expense. My wife and my brother laughing about how I worked myself to exhaustion while they f***ed in my bed. The shower upstairs stopped. I placed the phone exactly where I'd found it and walked out the front door without a word. My name is Liam Monroe. Until that morning, I believed I was a good man who had built a decent life despite difficult circumstances. I grew up in a working-class neighborhood in Portland, the elder son of Martin and Diane Monroe. My father ran a small construction supply business that barely kept us afloat, and my mother worked part-time as a receptionist at a dental office. They weren't warm people, but I was raised to believe that family came before everything. Sacrifice was expected, not praised. I started working for my father's business at 16, hauling supplies and learning the trade while finishing high school. When I met Elena Castillo during my second year of community college, I thought I'd found something beautiful amid the grind. She was studying business administration, ambitious and vibrant, with dark eyes that crinkled when she laughed. When she looked at me, I felt seen for the first time in my life. We married young. Too young, people said. I was 22. She was 21. I dropped out of college to work full-time when my father had his first heart attack. Elena finished her degree, and we planned for her to be the one to advance her career while I stabilized the family business. It never happened that way. My father's health problems multiplied. My mother developed early-onset Parkinson's. The business struggled. Medical bills piled up. I took over more responsibility, working 16-hour days, learning every aspect of the construction supply trade. Meanwhile, my younger brother Eric drifted through 3 different colleges before dropping out completely, coming home to help with the business, but mostly drinking and dating a string of women who never lasted. Elena stood by me through it all, or so I believed. She took a job at an accounting firm but never advanced as she'd hoped. The light in her eyes dimmed year by year. The passionate nights became less frequent, then rare, then almost non-existent. I blamed myself, my long hours, the stress that followed me home. I thought we were weathering a difficult season together. We bought a modest house in a decent neighborhood. I mortgaged it twice to keep my parents' medical bills paid and the business afloat. When Eric finally seemed to get serious about life and wanted to open a small construction contracting company as an offshoot of our supply business, I co-signed the loans. I worked weekends to help him renovate his first projects. I believed in him. For 12 years, I poured everything I had into supporting the people I loved. I missed vacations to cover shifts. I skipped date nights to finish emergency orders. I put my dreams on hold to fund everyone else's needs. And all that time, for at least the last 14 months, my wife had been f***ing my brother, and my parents had known. The first sign should have been the designer handbag. Elena came home with it 6 months before I discovered the affair, a sleek leather thing that probably cost more than I made in a week. "Early birthday present to myself," she'd said with a shrug when I raised an eyebrow. Our joint account certainly hadn't paid for it. Then came the weekend girls' trips that left her exhausted rather than refreshed. The sudden interest in her appearance after years of both of us letting ourselves go a bit. The new perfume that sometimes lingered in my car, though she rarely drove it. The late nights at the office that didn't match the firm's billing cycles. The distant look in her eyes when I tried to talk about our future. 3 months before Discovery Day, I'd walked into my parents' house unannounced, bringing my mother her medication on my lunch break. I heard laughter from the kitchen, Elena's laugh, though she was supposed to be at work. When I rounded the corner, she was sitting too close to Eric at the kitchen table, my mother smiling indulgently at them across the table. The conversation died instantly. My mother recovered first. "Liam, what a surprise! Elena just stopped by to bring me some of those pastries I like." No pastries were visible anywhere. Elena wouldn't meet my eyes. Eric slapped me on the back too hard as he left, saying he had a job site to get to. I didn't question it. I didn't want to see it. 2 weeks later, I overheard my father on the phone, his voice low. "You two need to be more careful. He's not an idiot, no matter how much he acts like one." Another piece I refused to assemble into the growing picture. At Eric's birthday dinner, he made a toast. "To taking what you want in life, not just accepting what you're given." His eyes flickered to Elena. She blushed and looked away. My father chuckled. My mother patted my hand as if consoling me for something I didn't yet understand. The gold bracelet appeared on Elena's wrist the next day. When I asked about it, she said it was just costume jewelry. It wasn't. I'd been in construction supply long enough to recognize real gold when I saw it. The disrespect grew bolder. Eric would call our house at odd hours, asking for Elena directly. My wife would take her phone to the bathroom for calls. Texts would make her smile in a way I hadn't seen directed at me in years. Still, I denied what was happening. I worked harder, stayed later at the warehouse, tried to give her space to get through whatever midlife crisis she was navigating. I even defended her to a colleague who hinted something might be going on. "Elena would never do that," I'd insisted. "We've been together since we were kids." The fool. The absolute goddamn fool I was. After discovering the texts, I drove aimlessly for hours, my mind cycling through 12 years of memories, reinterpreting every moment, every excuse, every strange coincidence. Eventually, I found myself parked outside my parents' modest suburban home. I needed to hear them deny it. I needed someone in my family to be on my side. My mother answered the door in her housecoat, surprise flickering across her face. "Liam, is everything okay? It's nearly midnight." "I need to talk to you and Dad," I said, my voice sounding strange even to my own ears. My father was in his recliner, oxygen tank beside him, watching a late-night talk show. He muted it as I entered but didn't stand. "What's so important it couldn't wait till morning?" he asked, irritation evident. I couldn't ease into it. "Elena and Eric are having an affair." The silence that followed wasn't shock. It wasn't confusion. It was the heavy, uncomfortable silence of people trying to decide how to respond to something they already knew. My mother recovered first, her hand fluttering dismissively. "Don't be ridiculous." "I saw their messages," I said. "All of them. Going back more than a year." My father sighed heavily, exchanging a glance with my mother. "Sit down, Liam." I remained standing. "Look," he continued, "marriages go through rough patches. You've been absent, working all the time." "Working to pay for your medical bills," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "To keep this roof over your head." My mother's face hardened. "And we're grateful. But a woman has needs. Eric, he notices her, makes time for her." The betrayal was so complete it felt like a physical blow. "You knew? You've known all along?" My father's face reddened. "Don't come in here with your self-righteousness. You neglected her." Eric stepped up. "Don't destroy the family over your ego." "Destroy the family?" I repeated, incredulous. "They've been f***ing behind my back for over a year, and I'm the one destroying the family?" "Watch your language in this house," my mother snapped. "Elena's been lonely. Eric makes her happy. If you were half the man your brother is—" I didn't let her finish. "They've been meeting here, haven't they? In your house? While I work to pay your bills?" Their silence was confirmation enough. "Liam," my father finally said, his voice softening in a way that made my skin crawl. "Sometimes these things happen. The important thing is to keep the family together. Eric's business is finally taking off. He can support Elena properly now." "Support her? With my money? With the loans I co-signed?" "It's done, Liam," my mother said with finality. "Elena's made her choice. Don't make this uglier than it needs to be. You've always been the practical one. Be practical now." In that moment, looking at these people who had raised me, who had taught me that family came first, who had accepted my sacrifices while betraying me in the most fundamental way possible, something inside me broke, and something else, something cold and calculating, took its place. "You're right," I said quietly. "I've always been practical." Relief washed over their faces, so confident were they in their control over me. My father nodded approvingly. "That's my boy. We'll all get through this. You'll move on. Find someone else eventually." I smiled, a small, tight expression that didn't reach my eyes. "Yes, we'll all get exactly what we deserve." As I walked out of their house that night, I knew with complete clarity that I would never be their obedient son again. The dutiful brother, the devoted husband, those men were dead. What remained was something far more dangerous, a man with nothing left to lose. I returned home after midnight. Elena was waiting up, pretending to read a book in bed. Her phone was nowhere in sight, probably hidden now, password protected. "Where have you been?" she asked, concern expertly feigned. I was worried. "Just driving," I said. "Needed to clear my head. Work stress." She nodded sympathetically, reaching out to touch my arm. I forced myself not to flinch. "You work too hard," she said, and I heard the hidden meaning now. "You're a fool who works while I betray you." "I know," I agreed, and went to shower. That night, I lay beside her, staring at the ceiling, feeling her warmth inches away from me, warmth she had shared with my brother, perhaps just days earlier in this very bed. I didn't sleep. I planned. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. As soon as Elena left for her office, I began my research. I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with before I made my move. First, I hired a private investigator named Reyes, a hard-faced woman with ex-military efficiency who came highly recommended for divorce cases. I paid her retainer in cash. "I need everything," I told her. "Photos, videos, financial records, anything showing the duration and extent of their relationship. And I need evidence of who knew about it." Next, I visited a divorce attorney, Marcus Hernandez, known for representing men in high-conflict divorces. I laid out what I knew, and he nodded grimly. "Oregon is a no-fault divorce state," he explained. "But evidence of adultery can impact property division and spousal support, especially if there's financial misconduct. We need to document everything." I provided him with access to all our financial records. The picture that emerged over the next 2 weeks was more damning than even I had imagined. Eric hadn't just been sleeping with my wife. He'd been systematically siphoning money from his business, the business I'd helped build and finance. The designer clothes, the jewelry, weekend getaways, all funded with money that should have gone back into the company where I was a silent partner and loan guarantor. My parents hadn't just known about the affair, they'd facilitated it. Bank records showed regular transfers from Eric to them over the past year. Hush money, essentially. And the contracts for the family business revealed something I'd never noticed. My father had quietly restructured ownership 2 years ago, giving Eric a larger stake than me, despite my decades of work. The betrayal was complete, coordinated, and calculated. They had all conspired not just to cuckold me, but to push me out entirely once I was no longer useful. As the evidence mounted, my plan took shape. It would require patience, precision, and a willingness to be as ruthless as they had been. I began with small, strategic moves. I consulted with a business attorney about my options regarding the family construction supply company. Given the evidence of financial impropriety, there were legal avenues I could pursue. I transferred my personal savings to a new account at a different bank. I quietly researched properties in another state. All the while, I maintained my routine. I went to work. I ate dinner with Elena. I even attended Sunday dinner at my parents' house, watching the subtle glances between my wife and brother, noting how my mother fussed over Eric while barely acknowledging me. The final piece fell into place when Reyes, the PI, delivered her report, along with a USB drive containing surveillance photos, recorded conversations, and financial documentation that connected all the dots. There was even footage of Elena and Eric entering a hotel together, time-stamped and irrefutable. "This is some of the most comprehensive evidence I've ever compiled," Reyes told me. "Whatever you decide to do with it, they don't have a leg to stand on." That night, I reviewed everything one last time. The faces of the people who had betrayed me stared back from photographs and financial statements. My wife, my brother, my parents. For 12 years, I had sacrificed everything for them. Now they would sacrifice everything for me. The plan was set. It would begin tomorrow. Phase 1 began with Eric. I knew his schedule intimately, not just because he was my brother, but because Reyes had documented his movements for weeks. Every Wednesday night, he met with suppliers in a downtown office building. He always parked in the same secluded corner of the underground garage, arriving around 7 p.m. and leaving by 8:30 p.m. On this particular Wednesday, I waited in the shadows near his reserved spot, wearing nondescript dark clothing and latex gloves. When his BMW pulled in, a car bought with company funds meant for equipment, I felt nothing but cold determination. Eric emerged from the car, checking his phone, a satisfied smirk on his face, probably texting my wife. He didn't notice me until I was 3 feet away. "Liam?" Confusion crossed his features. "What are you doing here?" I didn't answer. I simply swung the steel pipe I'd brought along, connecting solidly with his right knee. The crack was audible, as was his scream as he collapsed. "What the f***?" he shrieked, scrambling backward on the concrete. "Have you lost your mind?" I stepped closer, looking down at him. My brother, my blood, the man who had betrayed me in the most fundamental way possible. "How long, Eric?" I asked quietly. Fear registered in his eyes. He knew exactly what I was asking. "Liam, listen, it's not what you think." The pipe connected with his other knee. His howl echoed through the garage. I knelt beside him, grabbing his chin to force him to look at me. 14 months, I said. "That's how long you've been f***ing my wife. That's how long you've been stealing from the business. That's how long Mom and Dad have been helping you." "They told you?" He gasped through the pain. "They didn't have to." What followed wasn't something I'm proud of, but I won't deny it either. Years of suppressed rage exploded in that parking garage. I was methodical, targeting areas that would cause maximum pain with minimum risk of death. His face, his ribs, his hands, those hands that had touched my wife. When I finished, Eric lay unconscious in a pool of blood and vomit. His face was unrecognizable. Both knees were shattered, several fingers bent at unnatural angles. I dropped the pipe beside him, removed the gloves, and walked calmly to my car. The garage cameras had been disabled earlier that day, a simple bribe to a security guard who thought he was helping someone plan a surprise proposal. I drove to a pre-selected location and changed clothes, disposing of the bloodied ones in a dumpster behind an industrial complex. By 9 p.m., I was sitting at a crowded bar, establishing my alibi, making small talk with strangers who would later remember the unremarkable man who nursed 2 beers for over an hour. When my phone rang at 11:42 p.m., I already knew what it was about. "Liam?" Elena's voice was shrill with panic. "You need to come to Portland Memorial right away. It's Eric. He's been attacked." Attacked? I kept my voice carefully modulated between shock and concern. What happened? They found him in a parking garage. It's bad, Liam. Really bad. Your parents are already here. I'll be right there, I promised. I paid my tab and drove to the hospital, where I found my family in the surgical waiting room. My mother was sobbing. My father sat stone-faced, oxygen tank beside him. Elena paced, her mascara streaked from crying. She rushed to embrace me when I appeared. I forced myself to return the hug, to pat her back consolingly while looking over her shoulder at my parents. The doctors said it was deliberate, my father said hoarsely. Someone wanted to hurt him, badly. I shook my head, the picture of shocked disbelief. Who would do something like that? No one responded. But I saw the calculation in my father's eyes, the suspicion forming. He knew me well enough to wonder, but he had no proof. And with what I had planned next, he would never get any. "Will he be okay?" I asked, playing my part. The surgeon appeared before anyone could answer, his expression grave. "He's stabilized, but the injuries are extensive. Multiple facial fractures requiring reconstruction, both knees completely shattered. He'll need total replacements and extensive physical therapy, significant damage to his right hand. With time and rehabilitation, he can recover basic functionality, but..." "But what?" my mother demanded. "He'll likely walk with assistance for the rest of his life. And his face. We've done our best. But there will be permanent disfigurement." My mother collapsed into fresh sobs. My father's face aged 10 years in that moment. Elena stared at the surgeon in horror. And I stood there, feeling nothing but the cool satisfaction of Phase 1's completion. "When can we see him?" I asked. "He's heavily sedated. Tomorrow morning at the earliest." I nodded, then turned to Elena. "You should go home and rest. I'll stay with my parents." She hesitated, then agreed. As she gathered her purse, I added, "Don't forget, I have that early meeting tomorrow. Can you bring my blue suit when you come back in the morning? It's in the garment bag in our closet." "Of course," she said, kissing my cheek before leaving. There was no early meeting, but there was a garment bag in our closet, one that now contained all the evidence I'd compiled, including the PI's report, financial records, and surveillance photos of her and Eric together. By sending her home alone, I'd given her the opportunity to discover it. And when she did, Phase 2 would begin. I spent that night in uncomfortable hospital chairs with my parents, playing the role of the concerned brother. Neither of them slept. Neither did I, though for different reasons. Around 6 a.m., my phone vibrated with a text from Elena. "We need to talk. Coming to the hospital now." She'd found the evidence. Good. When she arrived 30 minutes later, her face was ashen. She wasn't carrying my blue suit. Our eyes met across the waiting room, and I saw the fear there. The knowledge that she'd been caught, that everything was about to come crashing down. "Liam," she began, voice trembling, "can we talk privately?" "Anything you need to say can be said here," I replied, loud enough for my parents to hear. "We're family, after all." My father frowned, sensing the tension. Elena swallowed hard. "Please, just a few minutes alone." "Is something wrong?" my mother asked, suddenly alert. I smiled coldly. "Elena found something interesting at home this morning. Didn't you, honey?" Her eyes widened in panic. "Liam, don't—" "Evidence," I continued calmly, "of her affair with Eric, of the money they've been stealing from the business, of your involvement in covering it up." The waiting room fell silent. My father struggled to his feet, face reddening dangerously. "You don't know what you're talking about," he sputtered. I pulled out my phone and connected it to the waiting room's TV using a dongle I'd brought for exactly this purpose. Within seconds, images appeared on the screen. Elena and Eric entering a hotel together. bank statements showing suspicious transfers, text messages between them discussing their plans. "I know everything," I said quietly. "Every lie, every theft, every betrayal." Elena collapsed into a chair, hands covering her face. My mother had gone deathly pale. "You're making a scene," my father hissed. "Turn that off immediately." "Why? Ashamed to see the truth? You weren't ashamed when you were helping them behind my back." A nurse appeared, drawn by the commotion. "Sir, you need to—" I disconnected my phone and stood. "No need. I was just leaving." I turned to Elena. "Check your email. The divorce papers have already been filed. You have until 5 p.m. to vacate our house. The locks will be changed at 5:01. "You can't do that," she cried. "Actually, I can. The house is solely in my name. You waived any claim to it in our prenuptial agreement in the event of infidelity, which has been thoroughly documented." "What prenup?" she stammered. "We never signed—" "Check your signature on page 12 of the evidence packet, the one you signed while distracted during our lease renewal 3 years ago. Completely legal, verified by 2 witnesses." It was a bluff, but she wouldn't know that until she consulted an attorney, which would take time she didn't have. "Where am I supposed to go?" Her voice had shrunk to a whisper. I shrugged. "Perhaps my parents can take you in, or maybe one of the hotels you've been frequenting with my brother." My father stepped toward me. "You listen here." "No, you listen," I cut him off. "You chose sides, you chose wrong, and now you all get to live with the consequences." I turned to leave, but paused at the doorway. "Oh, and one more thing. As of 9 a.m. this morning, I am the majority owner of Monroe Construction Supply. The board voted unanimously after reviewing evidence of financial misconduct involving the previous management. Your company credentials have been revoked. Your office has been cleared out. The police have been notified about the embezzlement." My father's face drained of color. "That's not possible. The board wouldn't—" "The board consists of me and 2 associates I brought in last month. It was all in the paperwork you signed without reading, just like you taught me to do to others." With that final twist of the knife, I walked out, leaving them to absorb the first wave of consequences. The second wave would hit by afternoon, when the forensic accountants I'd hired finished their audit of the company books. Phase 2 was complete. My family thought they'd seen the worst of my revenge. They were wrong. By nightfall, Elena had removed her essential belongings from our house. I watched from my car across the street as she loaded suitcases into her BMW, another gift from Eric, purchased with company funds. She hadn't taken much. She wouldn't need to. I'd spent the afternoon executing the remaining components of my plan. All joint bank accounts were frozen, credit cards canceled. The documentation of the affair had been sent to her workplace, a conservative accounting firm with a morality clause in their employment contracts. By Monday, she would be unemployed as well as homeless. The BMW was next. I made a call to the finance company, providing evidence that the vehicle had been purchased fraudulently through the business. By morning, it would be repossessed. I entered my empty house after she left, walking through rooms that had once held the illusion of a happy marriage. 12 years of memories, all tainted now. I didn't feel sadness, just a cold determination to finish what I'd started. The next morning, Phase 3 began with a series of precisely timed events. First, the audit results were delivered to the board of Monroe Construction Supply and to the district attorney's office. The findings were damning: systematic embezzlement, tax fraud, and misappropriation of company assets. Arrest warrants were issued for my father and Eric. Of course, Eric was still hospitalized under police guard, a detail I'd arranged through connections at the prosecutor's office. My father, however, was taken from his home in handcuffs, my mother screaming as neighbors watched from their driveways. Meanwhile, I met with the bank holding the mortgage on my parents' house, the mortgage I had been paying for years. With documented evidence of their involvement in financial fraud, I triggered an acceleration clause in the loan agreement. The full balance became due immediately. When they couldn't pay, foreclosure proceedings began. By noon, my phone was exploding with calls and texts. I ignored them all, focusing instead on the final phase of my plan. Elena had found temporary refuge with a friend. Not for long, as I'd made sure everyone in our social circle received evidence of her betrayal. My mother was frantically trying to secure a lawyer for my father. And somewhere in a hospital room, my brother was waking up to the realization that his face, his body, and his freedom were gone. I drove to the bank and closed out my remaining accounts. I signed the final paperwork, transferring my ownership stake in the now crippled family business to a holding company controlled by my attorney. All ties were being severed, one by one. That evening, I checked into a hotel under a name I would soon legally adopt. The documents for my legal name change were already being processed. New identification had been secured through channels I'd rather not detail. A fresh start awaited me in another state, with enough money to begin again. But first, one final message. I'd written it weeks earlier, revising it countless times until every word was perfect. A single sheet of high-quality paper, handwritten in my unmistakable script. You all taught me blood is thicker than water. You forgot to mention it drowns you when poisoned. I mailed it to my parents' home, the home they would soon lose, from the hotel's front desk. My revenge was complete. The betrayals had been answered tenfold. My brother would never walk normally again, his face forever a reminder of his sins. My wife had lost everything: her marriage, her lover, her home, her career, her reputation. My parents faced criminal charges, financial ruin, and public disgrace. And I was free. Free from obligation. Free from manipulation. Free from the weight of sacrificing for people who had never valued me. As I sat on the hotel balcony that night, watching the city lights below, I felt no regret, no guilt. Only a profound sense of justice served. They had destroyed the man I was, the loyal son, the devoted husband, the supportive brother. That man had died the moment I saw those text messages. What remained was someone stronger, someone who would never again be used or betrayed. I raised my glass to the night sky, to new beginnings built on the ashes of those who thought they could discard me, to the lesson they had taught me through their betrayal, that sometimes blood must be spilled before it can be truly cleansed. 6 months later, I stood on the deck of my newly purchased cabin in the mountains of Colorado, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and gold. Behind me, a simple but comfortable home. Before me, a future unburdened by the past. The news had followed me, even as I tried to leave it behind. Court records are public, after all. My father had been sentenced to 8 years for fraud and tax evasion. My mother had avoided jail time but was destitute, forced to move in with a distant cousin who took her in out of pity. Eric had eventually been released from the hospital, permanently disfigured and dependent on a cane. The attack had never been solved. No witnesses, no usable evidence, just another random act of violence in the city statistics. His legal troubles had compounded his physical ones. He had pled guilty to lesser charges in exchange for testimony against my father, receiving 3 years probation and a felony record that ensured he would never work in construction again. And Elena, my once beloved wife, had perhaps suffered the most complete destruction. Abandoned by Eric, who blamed her for their exposure. Shunned by former friends. Unable to secure employment in her field due to the scandal. The last I heard, she was waiting tables at a diner 2 towns over from our old home, living in a studio apartment and drowning in legal bills. Should I have felt satisfaction? Perhaps. What I felt instead was a quiet certainty that the scales had been balanced. They had taken everything from me, my trust, my family, my sense of place in the world. I had taken everything from them in return. Now, in this new place with my new name, I was rebuilding. The construction skills I'd spent a lifetime acquiring had easily secured me work with a local contractor. The modest fortune I'd managed to salvage from the wreckage of my old life had purchased this peaceful sanctuary. And the lessons I'd learned about loyalty, about trust, about the true nature of family, those had purchased something far more valuable: wisdom. I no longer looked back. The revenge that had consumed me was complete. Its fire burned out, leaving only cool ashes where once my rage had blazed. I had walked away from the ruins without a backward glance, leaving them to suffer the consequences of their choices, just as I had suffered the consequences of my blind loyalty. If there was one thing I had learned, it was this: true strength isn't found in forgiveness or in turning the other cheek. It's found in having the courage to deliver justice when no one else will, to stand alone rather than stand with those who would betray you, to walk away when walking away is the only path to peace. As darkness fell over the mountains, I raised a glass to the memory of the man I once was, the loyal fool who had sacrificed everything for people who had sacrificed nothing for him. That man was gone forever, replaced by someone wiser, harder, and infinitely more free. Blood may be thicker than water, but neither can wash away the stain of betrayal. Only justice can do that. And justice, as I had learned, is sometimes best served cold, calculated, and complete. I had served it well, and now, finally, I could rest. And so, we've reached the end of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take a twist you didn't see coming? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, and let's get a conversation going. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here or just haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join our community. I bring you fresh, captivating stories every day, so click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.